Good afternoon. So, welcome to your certified really agile practitioner training. Oh, sorry, wrong talk. So, I'm going to talk to you about what are you optimizing for, and some kind of referential talk within the talk, looking at Simon Wardley. And I thought this picture was very relevant. What are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing in your organizations? Are you optimizing over here on the left? Are you optimizing for the middle, or are you optimizing for the right? So the question is, what are you optimizing for? That is the question. In your organizations, do you use milestones? Let's have a show of hands if you use milestones.
Jon, I work for Barclays, of course we have milestones.
Put your hand up if your organization does not use milestones. Okay, nobody. So everyone's, oh, maybe at the back. A company of one, maybe. Do you use milestones? So, milestones, they are made of stone and they measure miles. They are immovable. They are 7 feet high. They are from 2,300 years ago from the Roman Empire. They are buried 2 feet and they measure 1,000 paces. So, has the Roman army marched 1,000 paces times the number of miles? Milestones do not tell you why you want to get to your destination. So this milestone here, 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗶𝘀𝗱, this milestone doesn't indicate why you might want to go to 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗶𝘀. You can't ask this milestone, like a milestone Alexa, hey milestone Alexa, what's 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗶𝘀 like? Where should I eat at 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗶𝗀? What's the best restaurant or the best pub? I don't know, I'm just a dumb milestone. All I know is it's 5 miles, 5,000 paces to 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀, and if you take a shortcut via the cotton mill, you can save 1/4 of a mile. So it doesn't tell you why you want to get there. It doesn't tell you how you're going to get there. So you can ask that milestone and it won't give you an answer as to how you're going to get to 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀. So you could walk, you could get a horse and cart. The milestone doesn't say anything about how you're going to get there or even how else you might get there. Well, you could go by scooter, you could go by motorbike, you could go by horse and cart, you could walk, you could fly. No, it doesn't tell you any of that. None of that information at all. It doesn't tell you anything at all about the quality or the experience of your journey. You get round the corner in that road, and it could be like the wildlings north of the wall. It could be, alternatively, nirvana and paradise, and it could be beautiful. It could be a lovely cambered road. You could be in a nice sports car or a motorbike. Birds are singing, the sun is out, and you're having an amazing day. Or it could be a bleak wasteland. No, does the milestone tell you that? No, it doesn't at all. Does it say anything about your intent for going to 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀𝗀? Because your intent might be, well, I want to go and have a really good night out. I want to find some good mead. I want to go have a good drink. Dear milestone, is this the best place to go for a good night out? I don't know. All I can tell you is it's 5,000 paces to 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀𝗀. So, my hypothesis is that milestones are a very poor analogy to use for complex adaptive change. And they are a very poor analogy to use for product development, and that we should not be using milestones because they are removable. Interestingly, as I was having a look on Google Maps to try to work out, I was actually trying to find that milestone on Google Maps, on Street View, and I was having a look at where actually is 5 miles from 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀𝗀, and it's a place called Stuck. So somebody must have been stuck in Stuck at some point, called it Stuck and put a milestone in. So you know you're 5,000 paces from 𝗘𝗁𝗶𝗀𝗀. But again, if you take a shortcut over the hill through the mud, you can save 1/4 of a mile. However, that milestone doesn't tell you when you're going to achieve that milestone because you take a shortcut, the shorter route, and that might take you 3 times longer because you might get stuck in the mud. It might be a bog, there might be a flooded river crossing. So you think you're taking a shorter route, but actually it takes you 3 times as long or twice as long. So milestones are a very poor analogy to use for complex adaptive change and change in organizations. Do any of you use the word deadline in your companies? Do any of you not use the word deadline in your companies? Okay, no hands went up for the record. So everyone uses the word deadline. Do you know the origins of the word deadline? Anyone who hasn't heard me speak about this before? Camp Sumter, US Civil War. Before 1864, the word deadline didn't really exist before the US Civil War. This is Camp Sumter. That wooden railing there is the deadline. If you put a foot or a finger past that deadline, you were shot. US Civil War, 1864, Camp Sumter, 20 feet inside and parallel to the fence is a light railing forming the deadline beyond which the projection of a foot or finger is sure to bring the deadly bullet of the sentinel, as reported at the time. Do you think deadline is a good word to use in organisations? No, I don't think so either. Probably not. Do you think it's motivational? You're going to get shot. Death is the analogy. Do any of you have any other words in use, like you've got deadline, death march maybe? I've heard death march used in the past. Drop dead date? Yeah, drop dead date. Your drop dead date? Okay, great, I'm going to die. Okay, thanks. So the question is, what are you optimising for? Are you optimising for analogies of death? Do you use Gantt charts? Do any of you not use Gantt charts at all in your companies? Okay, 1, 2, okay, well done, 3. Fantastic. So we have 3 people out of everybody here who doesn't use Gantt charts. Fantastic. So during the summer, when I'm on the beach, my summer reading was a book from 1923 titled The Gantt Chart, A Working Tool of Management by Wallace Clark. In this book, what it says of the Gantt chart, which used to be called the man record chart, the purpose of the man record chart is to show whether or not a man does a day's work, and if not, the reason why. If the foreman, note the foreman, has accurate information, he makes use of it. But if not, he makes as close an estimate as possible based on his past experience, his estimate approximating the amount of work which any good man should do on any good machine. It's the foreman estimating on behalf of the dumb worker. We then go on to page 44, and you have the concept of the short line man. There are some workmen, however, who cannot measure up to the average and do not respond to the foreman's effort to stimulate their ambition. So, this is the job of those of you in project manager positions, is to stimulate the ambition of your workers. Because obviously they can't do it for themselves. Experience has taught the foreman that men who feel their inferiority are very apt to do everything possible to distract the attention of others from that fact. This shows itself in flagrant breaches of shop discipline or in creating discontent in the mind of others. In this way, they secure an outlet for their energy and distract their own attention, at least from their own inferiority. This is the mindset. These people who are inferior short-line men are creating a subdiversion to distract people from their inferiority. Long-line men. The man record charts are invariably welcomed by good workmen, provided the charts are used to help the workmen rather than to drive them. Yes. So the long-line man is there to help them. The short-line man is there to punish them. And just the concept that you've got short-line men and long-line men is, I think, frankly shocking. Gantt charts. Henry Gantt worked with Frederick Winslow Taylor in the early 1900s. The Gantt chart came about from Taylorism with manual labour in factories. Gantt charts are wholly unsuitable for complex adaptive change in complex adaptive systems, for emergent change. So we should not be using Gantt charts, is my hypothesis. Do you do projects with some Agile in the middle? Yes. So, Agile project management, you take your 3,482 requirements, I mean stories, and you use the word sprint 10 times in the middle of your Gantt chart. That blue box represents your project. That is your project, that is your Gantt chart in that blue box. And then within that, you have some role-based handoffs, which probably take about 18 months on the left-hand side. You then have sprint, 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 for which it's like, why isn't it done yet? Probably about 2 weeks. And then some more handoffs at the end, and then finally you get something into production. You have big upfront design, buffed, and you have big upfront risks, buffer. You have a solution which is predetermined at the point of knowing the least, and you have the word commitment being used in some contexts, which is, let's commit to what we're going to deliver at the end of this, but we're agile because we're using the word sprint. In one particular scenario, one particular context, I was talking to a team of teams, and they were halfway through sprint 1 and they were already saying they're late. Oh, I can't compute that. I can't compute. You get the learning at the end. You get the value at the end. You have unplanned work at the end, probably twice as much unplanned work as the actual work. And you have literally a big bang. So the question to ask yourself is, what are you optimizing for in your companies? Is this what you're optimizing for? Is there maybe a more optimal way to optimize? In your organizations, do you incentivize teams or individuals? Do you incentivize individuals? Yes. And do you incentivize individuals by value, but like within a value tribe or within a job role tribe? Job role. Yes. So we have our job roles here. DevOps, business analysis, business. And what do? We have the halo effect for the top 10%. We have our favorites. We have the few people who are promoted, the people who are on the up, and then we have the bottom 10%. And there are still companies doing stack ranking, and people are at the bottom 10% either get no bonus or in the past actually get asked to leave the company. I don't know whether companies are still actually doing that exiting bit. I have worked at a company where that was happening. And what are you optimizing for there? You're optimizing for information withholding. You're optimizing for competition within your role. You're not optimizing for the flow of value. You're optimizing for the holes on their side of the boat, not my side of the boat. And you're optimizing for probably not very positive behaviors, is what I have observed. And you're optimizing for individuals over teams rather than teams over individuals. So the question to ask yourselves in your organizations is, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for learning? So this is the bubble effect. And with your role-based silos and your incentivization and the way people are paid and rewarded and bonused and performance appraisal, you end up with these learning bubbles. You end up with bubbles of learning that are not shared because competition, because if I hang on to this learning, I'm going to know more than the other people, and knowledge is power, and so therefore I will get promoted, and these people won't. Or we are all being, we are in the development tribe, we're not actually in a value stream, and so therefore we need to do a really good job within app dev, so we're going to hold on to this information. And there are walls in terms of your tribal alignment where knowledge is not being shared. And I think it's something like a reduction in 50% of knowledge when you have role-based handoffs. Every role-based handoff is a 50% reduction in knowledge transfer. So just think when you've gone 2 or 3 times across how little knowledge is actually transferred. Also, you get the tall poppy effect, which is in some organizations and some companies actually standing up and saying, you know what, I think we're doing something pretty cool here, or we've got some really good learnings, and the culture can be you get shot down. It's like, get back in your box, don't be so clever, kind of don't share your learning. So think about this bubble effect, and think about, again, are you optimizing for learning? So then the question is, what do you want to optimize for? My view is what you should be optimizing for is better, value, sooner, safer, and happier. Better is quality. Sooner is lead time, throughput, and flow efficiency. Safer is continuous compliance. It is agile, not fragile. And happier is happier colleagues, customers, citizens, and climate, because it is not at any cost to society or any cost to the planet. And as you all know, we are in a climate emergency right now. What's going on in Sydney at the moment? The threat to Sydney, all-time high, smoke across Sydney. We are in a climate emergency. 𝗘𝗁𝗏 has done some talking about donut economics and renewable economics. We need to get away from this mindset of grow, grow, grow. Because it isn't like grow, make, take, throw away, or take, make, dispose. We have to think about circular economics and triple line accounting. Oh my goodness. Would you mind clicking on that dialogue, please? Thank you very much. So when you focus on quality, flow, agile, not fragile, safety, on value, which is OKRs, objectives and key results, that's the reason you're in business. and on happier, those balance each other out. These are the outcomes that I suggest that you should be optimizing for in your organizations, whether this is complex, adaptive, emergent product development, or whether it is lean and it's mass production of the same thing. My hypothesis is you should be optimizing for better value, sooner, safer, happier. They balance each other out. You cannot game these, because if you force throughput at the cost of other things, your quality goes down and your happiness goes down. So you have to do this. You have to, if you want to increase your throughput, reduce your time to market, time to learning, concept to cash, you have to do this while keeping quality high and happiness high. And actually, no surprise, what we actually see is as you do this, they all go up. They all get better, because you're doing smaller change, you're more customer-centric, you're optimized for value, your quality significantly goes up. So at my previous place of work, we had on average 20 times fewer incidents in production. We had on average a 3 times productivity improvement, so the 85th percentile lead time was 3 times quicker, throughput was 300%, and we had the highest ever colleague engagement scores, because it is a more humane way to work. And they actually have a positive effect on each other when you do it right and you don't try and do too much too quickly. In terms of milestones, so the alternative to milestones is outcomes. So rather than fixating on a deterministic mindset and on outcomes, fixate on output rather, fixate on outcomes. So this is a bit like the military going from detailed command to mission command. What is the mission you're trying to achieve? So, for example, you have your OKRs, or your business outcomes. You have your quarterly outcome hypotheses. So we believe that doing some work on the mobile phone app will enable us to sell more mortgages. We know we're successful when we've had more downloads of the app, we've had more applications, leading indicators, lagging indicator, we sold more mortgages. Or we've issued more loans, or we've sold more helicopter engines, or we've sold more trench coats, or shoes, or handbags, or sneakers, or trainers, or whatever it is you're in business to do. Those quarterly OKRs, outcome hypotheses, are broken down into monthly experiments. I've changed the language personally here, not features, but actually experiments, because what you're doing is you're now running an experiment on a hypothesis. So for January, February, March, what are the experiments that we're going to run on this hypothesis? Let's test it. Those break down into daily stories and continuous delivery, and you could have 100 deploys a day. You're getting real-time feedback on your strategy. You're getting real-time feedback on your outcome hypotheses instead of a Gantt chart with milestones and a deterministic mindset. That groups up into a portfolio epic. The portfolio epic is your 12-month container of business outcomes. So you'll have Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. You've got your container. So we believe that by the end of 2020, we will be the #1 company in our market by market share. That could be your outcome hypothesis by doing Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. These are the outcomes to break that down. If you've got a larger business, you'll have multiple portfolio epics. You'll have multiple outcomes. Limit work in progress. So Klaus-Leopold talks about flight levels. This is the same as flight levels and Klaus-Leopold. You've got a multi-level Kanban board. You're limiting work in progress at every level. And this is a learning for leaders, especially kind of senior leaders who are used to starting rather than stop starting, start finishing. It's limiting what's in progress at multiple levels. You're limiting WIP. That groups up into portfolio objectives. That's getting into your 3-year, multi-year strategy. And then that groups up into your firm-wide, organization-wide, multi-year objectives. And there's lineage there. So you've got commander's intent. So for the very top there, you've got your 3 to 5 outcome hypotheses over a multi-year time period for the entire organization. And then you double click, and within your organization, you've got multiple business units. They will have their own multi-year strategy aligned to the overall strategy. And you can be an individual doing a 2-hour task at the bottom there, and you can see how your 2-hour task aligns to the strategic intent for the entire firm. Your best place to innovate on the front line. You're best placed to interpret that commander's intent as to what you actually do. And you're free to do it because you're not locking down, you're not taking a deterministic mindset. You've got strategy alignment on the left, and you've got benefits realization on the right. So you've got your strategy alignment, and you're getting real-time feedback on your strategy. So you can pivot it. You can learn quickly. You can change direction. You can invest more money in your bets or less money in your bets. You can change your bet mid-race. So that was the work. Now, the workers, as per Mick's talk this morning, long-lived teams on long-lived products on long-lived value streams. So here, and you're capacity funded. So you've got your value streams. At the bottom, you've got a shared service value stream, which is, for example, HR, finance. So there are shared service value streams which support the value streams above, and there are customer-facing value streams. In the context of investment banking, this might be equity trading, and it might be fraud. In your context, it could be mortgages, lending, it could be menswear, women's wear, handbags, trench coats, depending on what your company does. It could be shipping, it could be ports, whatever it is your company does. So you've got your long-lived teams on long-lived products. Now those value streams, that is why you're in business. So a value stream is probably how your company is already set up outside of IT. It's probably already set up into value streams because this is what your organised human endeavour is. It's why you're in business. Typically, IT is not set up like that. And you have both business products and you have IT products. So, for example, you might have an equity as a business product, or an interest rate swap is a business product, or a mortgage, or a loan, and you have IT products that support the business products. Some cases they're platforms, they're shared, and they support multiple of the above. In some cases they're very specialised purely to trade interest rate swaps, for example. So that's how you organise the workers. Long-lived teams on long-lived products on long-lived value streams. And they're nested. Both of these are nested. This is super important. Both your outcomes, so when you overlay your outcomes onto your value streams, both of those are nested. Your outcomes are nested and your value streams are nested. This is super important. Squads, tribes, chapters and guilds. Spotify never got big enough to have the problem to need to nest tribes. So when companies roll out squads, tribes, chapters and guilds, they're missing typically a whole bunch of tricks, generally by how they're being advised. They're missing a whole bunch of tricks. One of the tricks they're missing is there's no concept of nested tribes. But for large organisations, you need nested tribes. And you need nested outcomes as well. And actually, the Spotify model is not the Spotify model. There's conference talks from people who worked at Spotify who say it's not their model. And actually, what it's all about is the values and the culture at Spotify is actually what Spotify is really about. Experimentation, fail fast. So that is, and you've got capacity funding on the value streams. So you are capacity funded. Treat the money as a constraint to maximise your value curve. You're trying to pick out the golden bricks. So this is the pattern where the anti-pattern is a Gantt chart with milestones. This is the opposite of the Gantt chart with milestones, is this. We're calling this intelligent flow. Previously, we were calling this lean portfolio management. It is more than lean portfolio management. So that word is used in a different context where you've got prediction in 3-month cycles and you've got the word commitment and you've predicted what you're going to do in 3 months. This is not predicting what you're going to do in 3 months. So this is more outcome focused. And also what I've found, it really blurs the boundary between our business and IT because you're using common language. The language is, we want to increase our market share. In Latin America, we want to increase our diversity. We want to reduce our carbon emissions. You're all using the same language. And what you have is, because of the nesting, you have these nested learning loops. You've got hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, and multi-year. And as I said, you've got real-time feedback on your strategy. You don't have, how are we doing on our 3-month commitment? How are we doing on our predetermined solution that we're going to deliver in 3 months' time? No. You're able to pivot on any of those cadences. So you've got, in terms of what you're optimizing for outcome hypotheses over prediction, for experiments, for feedback, for speed, and for learning. So this is a big shift. And this, for me, this has got the biggest bang for the buck. This is the key that unlocks the door, for me personally, to get organizations to shift to this. And note, it doesn't involve the use of the word agile at all. This is not about Scrum or Kanban or Safe or Less or DAD or Nexus or Scrum at Scale. It's about none of those. It's about how you organize, what are you optimizing for? You could do this in a waterfall manner if you really wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. And then optimize for dissolving the learning bubbles. So ways you can dissolve those learning bubbles and the bubble effect is recognition and reward. So awards, super powerful. It costs very little, but it's the recognition. So get a senior leader in your organization to be handing out ways of working awards or better, sooner, safer, happier awards, and award teams, not individuals. it's super, super powerful, and it costs next to nothing to do. It's really easy to do. Run internal conferences. The positive psychological effect is strong. Psychological safety, so often this is a bit of a journey for senior leaders to go on who've got to where they've got to through command and control. This is a journey. A leopard can't change its spots overnight. People need to pull coaching. You can't inflict coaching on somebody, so an individual has to want to exhibit more psychological safety. I've worked with business areas where there's been a very strong lack of psychological safety, and there's been learned helplessness. The people have been waiting for the next order and didn't dare improve themselves. An area all on the same 2-week sprint cycle, even when they shouldn't have been, for example. Incentivize value stream aligned teams, again, kind of in line with Mick's talk this morning. Incentivization, don't incentivize individuals within a job role bucket, within a job role silo. Rather, incentivize teams aligned to what you're in business to do. So are your multidisciplinary teams and your outcomes, how are teams doing? Incentivize that instead. And communities of practice, again, very powerful. Voluntary, law of 2 feet, a community of practice on ways of working, a community of practice on DevOps, on CI/CD, on mortgages, on lending, on helicopter engines. It doesn't really matter what the topic is. Create a community of practice on whatever you want to bring people together across your organization. It's super informal. It's voluntary. We're going to have a bit like meetup.com. We're going to have a meetup Thursday night, pizza and beers, and we're going to share some learnings on a given topic. Where I worked previously, we had 37 communities of practice with 15,000 people in them, entirely voluntary. You turn up, you don't. It's Darwinian. Conferences like this. So this is a super awesome way to pop those learning bubbles where people are sharing, and it's great that it's two-way. So it's fantastic that a good number of you in the audience have been up on this stage sharing your own stories, and it's never about sharing when you're done, because you're never done. You can share your journey, and it's kind of share and share alike. And no one's perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. So this is an awesome way to pop those learning bubbles, and you can run them internally as well. So I've come up with this acronym to optimize for learning because for me, PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act, or PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, or OODA, as we heard earlier, John Boyd, Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. For me, that's missing something, and it's missing an explicit sharing of your learning. So I've got this acronym, and it's, first of all, align to your goals, to your outcome hypotheses. So when you're going to do something, when you're going to take an action, make sure it is in line with your nested outcome hypotheses, with your strategy. A common anti-pattern I see is Agile headless chickens disconnected from strategy. And they are self-fulfilling teams with a product owner replenishing the backlog, feature factory. So you align. You sense. So this is Wardley mapping. This is reading the terrain. This is building a map of the terrain. What's commodity? What's not commodity? What do we think is going to move where? And it's attending a conference like this, or it's reading posts on Twitter or medium.com. You're subscribing to learning. You're sensing. You respond. You're amplifying or dampening previous experiments or patterns that work at other organizations that you think will work in yours. You experiment. You act. You distill, you've acted, you distill those learnings, and then finally you share. And this is what's missing for me for PDCA, PDSA, OODA, some of these other loops, or even build, measure, learn. What's missing for me is an explicit publish. So again, people have been up on this stage publishing their own learnings. So I implore you to write on medium.com, write on Twitter. It doesn't, don't wait for perfect, because it will never be perfect. Just share your trip ups, share your learnings. So that's ASREDS is the acronym there. ASREDS, and so we're experimenting with this in terms of especially that last one, that really intentional sharing and trying to share lessons learned. In terms of how, invite over inflict. Think big, start small, learn fast. So you've got your innovators on the left, you've got your laggards on the right. This is the diffusion of innovation curve, 1962, Everett Rogers, 508 studies went into this. Innovators are motivated by scarcity. Your early majority and your late majority are motivated by social proof. And then you've got the grumpy cats who are hell no. Over my dead body. I've had people say that to me. when you've got crossing of the chasm, so you need to communicate to help people cross that chasm. When you draw a normal probability distribution as a cumulative probability distribution, it's an S-curve. This is how humans adopt change, in an S-curve. So in your organizations, as you're going about change and organizational agility and ways of working, keep the gradient lower for longer than you think. You cannot force the pace of change. You can draw a straight line up there and say we're going to be 40% of all teams and people are going to be agile by the end of year 1, but it won't happen. You'll have new labels and old behavior. You have to keep the pace of change low, and you've got the most amount of impediments against you at the beginning. It's the hardest at the beginning. So S-curve your way to change, and then it will be sticky. The rule of one experiment, one customer or team, one location in production. So in terms of how you start with the rule of 1. Start with one experiment, with one team, in one location, in production. Don't go past go until that's successful, until that's working. Or kill it, run another one until it's working, and then do the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then increase your gradient over time. So that's the rule of 1. And then this is the 𝗘𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗃. So in terms of how to get there, I'm personally getting a lot from Mike Rother and the 𝗘𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗃. I take a lot of inspiration from it. So you've got your challenge, you've got your target state, better value, sooner, safer, happier, for example, or whatever words work for you. You've got your current condition, you've got your quarterly business outcome, which is your next target condition, which is number 3. It's beyond your knowledge threshold, you're not quite sure how you're going to get there, and then you take a wiggly line to get there. And this is an important point because in the past, we've taken a straight line. We think we know how we're going to get from number 2 to number 3. The reality is we don't. So you take a very intentional, dear leaders, we're going to take a very intentionally experimental line to get there. And impediments are not in the path, impediments are the path. It's going from impediment to impediment to impediment to impediment. A bit like a physical manufacturing floor. You've got a bottleneck on one machine, you alleviate that bottleneck, the bottleneck moves to another machine. Repeat, 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 repeat forever. So to summarize, the question to ask yourselves and your organizations is what are you choosing implicitly or explicitly to optimize for? Are you optimizing for better value, sooner, safer, happier? What one thing will you do differently tomorrow? Have a think about what you will do differently when you get back to work tomorrow to optimize for better outcomes. And what are you going to optimize for? Thank you.